So I'll just put this down here, and then to change the slides, just right there.
Got it.
Okay. So you
Okay.
probably want to look at attendees.
That's right.
Okay.
Perfect.
So remember, hand raising will be a little hand in this column. Questions will come in this box down here.
Got it.
So maybe we'll just open both of those right
No, we lose the other one. Okay.
now. Okay.
So I'll figure it out.
Sounds great. And we're 11 o'clock, so we can go ahead and start whenever you want.
Let me just do one thing.
So you'll want to, once we do start, well, actually, we can move this a little bit, but you'll want to make sure that you're not in the shot.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit back here.
Actually, and if you could, yeah, that's all right. That's good. Okay, ready?
Whenever you are. Good.
Okay, let's go.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. This is Tima Bansal. I'm the Executive Director of the Network for Business Sustainability, as well as Professor at the Ivey Business School. I want to welcome you to this webinar on research, strategies for doing research with impact. I also just want to first maybe start with the instructions so you know what to expect in the webinar. This webinar is not probably a typical webinar in that you're just going to listen. We're actually hoping that you will participate in some of the conversation as well. And so there's some basic instructions that will help you participate. First of all, at the moment, certainly while other people are speaking, it'd be really good if you made sure that your computer microphone is activated and turned on, but we will have you muted on this side. And when you are ready to speak, we need you to raise your hand. So there's a button that you'll see on the left side of the control panel. Just to get you in the practice of raising your hand, maybe if we can get you all to raise your hand right now, and then I'll put your hand down in a minute. So please raise your hand. Andrea, she's had practice. Katerina Sprawl, I got yours. Yvonne, I got yours. Jocelyn, thank you. Isabel Lassard, thank you. Rod Lohan, thank you. Got yours. Laura Alboreto, got yours. Sanjeev Jha, thank you. Trevor Zink, you can put your hand down now. Vasela, can you put your hand up? Kim, you can put your hand down if you want now. Sanjeev, you can put your hand down. Felipe Reyes, thank you. I got your hand. And Allison Niederkorn, thank you. Thank you, Vasela. And Terry Neladov, thank you. You can take your hand down. So that's also to illustrate not only how to put up your hand and put it down again, but also to just to tell you how many people are on the line and who's on the line. So we want to really create a sense of community. And there are about 20 people that we'll have. And that's to also signal that this is really meant to be a conversation where we can learn from each other as well as the speakers that we have organized. So with that, I am going to actually move to the next slide and start the webinar. I want to start by telling you a little bit about the center's community. The people on the line are primarily people who are running research centers. And so this webinar is really meant to build capacity within centers. The center's community that MBS has developed started in about April 2012. And that was when we hosted a workshop here at Ivey in London, Ontario, Canada. We had 60 center representatives join us here. And they identified a real need for collaboration, that we could increase each of our capacities and then generally have greater impact if we work together. That was in April 2012, and the first thing that we did then is to build a community platform, an online platform. And most of you are on this webinar have joined the platform. If you haven't, I encourage you to do so. And the next thing that we did then is currently we have 80 centers now from 24 countries that are part of this community. So it is really starting to build, and I think that we have a better sense of, a better notion of who we are, how big we are, and a sense of collective identity. And that's, I think, an important step in making changes. And I just wanted to tell you that we also will be hosting our second workshop now at the Harvard Business School on June 25th to 27th. The notice has just basically gone out, but it's only to our community. So we wanted to give you a first chance at attending the workshop. It's a limited enrollment, so I do encourage you to email Chelsea Hicks if you're interested in the webinar. I will actually introduce her right now. We have Chelsea there, who you might have already corresponded with. I wanted to thank her because she did a lot of the background work and with support from Seth Pashing, who's behind her. And so just in case you thought that I was the only one here, I promise you that I could not have done this without them. So if you are interested in the second workshop at Harvard, please do let us know. There's no cost to attend the workshop, and we will cover the food and local expenses. You just have to pay your own transportation. So I really want to move quickly then to the guest speakers that we have. We have 3 segments of guest speakers. And just to tell you about the reason why we ordered them the way we have in the major topics, is that we're going from the micro issues to the more macro. And so William Young from Leeds in the UK will be talking about a specific partnership that his research group has done with Asda, which is a food retailer. And then we're going to move into Pam Laughland from the Network for Business Sustainability and Tim Faveri from Tim Hortons, who will talk about our collaboration with 18 organizations, followed by John Robinson, who has created a really impactful center at the University of British Columbia. And so he's going to talk about some of those more strategic issues, opportunities, and challenges. And so we'll move directly to the speakers. I wanted to just briefly introduce William Young, but if you have any questions while any of the speakers are speaking, questions of clarification especially, please just type them in and we'll ask the question of the speaker immediately after the speaker finishes speaking. But at the very end, we're hoping that we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes that we can have more of a dialogue with the participants on the line right now. And so you can have the meatier questions you can leave till the end, as well as we can learn from each other's experience. So with that, I just wanted to introduce William Young. He is the director of I love the name, the BOSS Research Group, which is a Business and Organizations for Sustainable Societies Research Group. It's at the University of Leeds in the UK, as I said. His research is primarily on decision making and identifying how to motivate sustainable behavior. So he's already working on the impact space. And so with that, then I will hand over to William. And just to inform the group, the speakers already know, I will show up again 30 seconds before I'm hoping that they will complete their discussion. They're about 10 to 12 minutes each. Okay, go ahead, William.
Great, thank you very much. It's good to be here. Just to say that we came up with the acronym before we came up with the actual words for the research group, but there we go. So thank you. Go have the next slide. So the research group I have is here at the University of Leeds, and I'm a professor of sustainability in business, and we sort of work in an interdisciplinary sort of environment end of the university, working with companies. So it's really quite applied. And what I want to talk to you today is really our sort of case study of a partnership we've developed with Asda, which is part of the Walmart grouping of retailers. Next slide, please. So it's really just sharing. I'm sure you've all had experience working with different organizations, and I thought, when I was approached to do this talk, it was really interesting to reflect on it and to see if we could, how it compared to other relationships we've got. But this is, rather than a one-off project, it's a partnership that's with several projects going on. And really the elements, I think, on reflection for this partnership is really, obviously, you've got to have a good research record in a specialist area. So ours was in sustainability, decision making, and behaviour change, pro-environment behaviour change, and consumer behaviour. So that's what really set us aside from others. So of course these organisations are wanting the best, rather than generic research that you may find in consultancy, where there's consultants apply their skills to a variety of areas, where this was really they're wanting more of an expertise. Of course, it takes time. The partnership, really, from first sort of meeting until anything really solid came out, was a good 3 years, which is a long time to keep going, even in terms of putting in normal research bids. That's a long time. You've got to be there in the room, so networking, so going to industry conferences, and so that's physically and online. And that's where obviously you can meet people and see what they're doing and start that relationship. The second area I'm going to go to is really that they want to see to test you out on something small first, and I'll talk about that in a moment. You've also got to be persistent without really stalking them, because they, as you all know, they are incredibly busy compared to the pace of life we have. We think it's quite busy, but theirs is completely nuts. And you're the bottom of the pile usually, so it's trying to get in there, and usually the networking helps with that, because you can actually see them and talk to them either through the internet, on these sort of social platforms that like we're doing today, or through physical conferences. And also the number 6 there is, which I think I found the hardest to do from a researcher point of view, is to take an institutional perspective, because they're wanting almost, once you start the relationship, you to help find other researchers with specialisms to do other stuff within the organisation, because these organisations are very large, and that's quite hard, because it's your contact, you've worked hard at it, and you feel like you're giving it over to someone else, or quite a few other people in the institution who you feel can mess it up. But it's important in developing that relationship, because they want to, it strengthens them coming to you to find other people, and you can perhaps pick up other projects or help with the partnership in other ways. So I think that's good. Of course, there's a lot of luck in all of this. So, so the next slide, please. So the start, as I said, network and industry conferences. Then what we did was we invite people to come and talk on our masters, our sustainability programs, and we've got 6 of those, so there's quite a lot of scope for them to come and talk, to little talks or case studies. A lot more networking, in trying to push yourself to go and talk to them and see if there's any links, and then passing on research findings to them and briefings, I think, to keep the conversation going. Otherwise, after that initial introduction meeting, it can't all fall flat. And then, and through all that, it's really to see if your personality and their personality and approaches to the work is similar. Just had another similar thing going on at the moment, and there's personality clashes, so it's trying to move people around to see if they have the similar outlook and so on, and the face has to fit. Next slide, please. And then the test in the waters, where we have projects, MC projects, where the students have to go and work in an organisation, and that's a good way to develop the partnership where they can see what you do and you can do it well. Of course, you've got to try and coerce your best students to go to the organisations that you want the partnership with, which can be difficult. But that's a good way to develop a relationship, because there's someone there and they can see what you're doing. And then we had a chance to, after that, contribute to a blog, an online scheme they were having with their suppliers, and they saw that through this research briefings we were giving them that someone was doing some work on employee behaviour change, and we facilitated that person helped on their supplier network online system, and that sort of was a big move forward, because then they saw that there was potential there and outputs that could help them. And then further discussions of areas of interest, so this dialogue keeps going on, and of course they change their idea all the time because there's lots of things going on. Next slide, please. So, and that led to really something coming up, and from that moved quite quickly. The agenda sort of changed in the UK to really look at food waste in the house and how supermarkets were contributing to that and their supply chains. So it was an opportunity that they felt that they needed some time to think about and to see what else going on and to do some piloting, rather than a sort of consultant thing where they knew what they're doing and just wanted to do it quickly. So it was an opportunity for us, and it was something new in terms of a retailer trying to influence behaviour in the home. So it was a little bit new for them, even though they're very good at their marketing and so on. And then it's up to us then to go, and they didn't want to pay for it all because it's research and lots of pressure on finances everywhere. So we went and found some match government funding, did the application, and all that went through very fast. Once they agreed to do it, and they provided half the money, and the government provided half the money. The key thing that after that took the time really was the contract between the two organisations, and it's really lawyers love arguing, but it was trying to make sure that they were focusing on the right things, and then the project as well. So there was, and then further opportunities come out of that, and now that's again back into the institutional perspective, where they've got lots of other things going on and they want other people to help in other that we can't. So it's trying to facilitate that, and they trust us as an institution rather than as independent individual researchers. So that's an important thing. And next slide, please. So the actual project is really looking at food waste in the house, and trying to develop behaviour change intervention to pilot in store and online that can reduce this food waste at home. So we've done the way it's set up is that the postdoc researchers actually works in Asda in the sustainability team. So that's really helped, because with a project like this, where we're trying to meddle around as some of the other departments see us doing with their stuff, it's about developing relationships internally with other departments, because of course the sustainability team is one of a lot of different functions in there. So the stage we're at, we've done evidence review, and we've whittled down the behaviour change interventions, and we're just developing how we're going to do that physically in the store and online. And so we've got a couple of years still to go on this, but the payback for us really is to do some work in a real world environment and that has a big impact. And that's what's so interesting here, is that even though you could argue from externally that this or that should happen, but once you're inside, you're having to deal with all sorts of other departments, marketing, purchasing, their supply chain managers, and that's where it takes the time, is trying to work with them over time to persuade them this is a good thing. So you're changing inside as well as the overall organisation. So as I said, a couple of other projects have come along with this, and that's been good for the institution. So there's a partnership between not just us, our research group, with the university and Asda. So that's our sort of more self-reflection on that, and hopefully that's been of use to people.
Super, William. That was really insightful. Just a reminder to the group, if you have any questions, just type them in for now, and then at the end of the 3 segments, we'll have dialogue. And William, you can turn off your webcam if you want right now, as well as mute. And I just want to say one thing that I really took away from William's insights were that he built the relationship with Asda first, and then had the project that came afterwards. I can see another model working where you have the project that brings the organizations to the table. So, but the impact on having real change through food waste and behavioral change, I think, is not only good for Asda, but also really good for the researchers. So that was really powerful. Thank you, William. So since I don't see any questions for clarification from anybody, I'm going to move to the next segment, which is Pam Laughland and Tim Faveri. Thank you. Chelsea's helping me advance slides. I'll introduce them briefly, and Pam and Tim. Tim, you can maybe turn on your webcam as well if you'd like. So introducing them briefly, Pam Laughland is the Managing Director of the Network for Business Sustainability. Of course, we're hosting this event as well. But because we've been in this research practice space for some time, we thought that we could use our examples as well. And Pam Laughland, though, has been with us for about 6 years. And she is amazing because she's one of those few people that can really navigate the difficulty between dealing with managers and their urgent demands and dealing with researchers and their continuous demands. And so I always commend her at her ability to navigate both spaces. Tim Faveri is a Director of Sustainability and Responsibility at Tim Hortons. We've known Tim for about 4 years. He's been a really good friend of the network. And he has a background in consulting at Deloitte, so we'll forgive him for that, because now he's making really important changes at Tim Hortons. As we all know, the fast food industry or food services industry is full of issues that they can tackle. And I think what really sets Tim apart is that he's made some significant advances at Tim Hortons. And so to be a real change agent within an organization is truly outstanding. So with that introduction, then, I'm going to turn myself off and let Pam start.
Thanks, Tima. Hopefully you can hear me all right. I'm going to talk a little bit about how at NBS we've started to build infrastructure to support some enduring research partnerships. And I'll do that in brief and then turn it over to Tim. So I'm going to talk about our NBS Leadership Council, whose logos you see on the screen in front of you. This is a foundational group on which NBS's activities were built 6-7 years ago. It includes large Canadian companies and Canadian subsidiaries of multinationals who are truly leaders in their industry on sustainability. And our approach to doing research has always been to start with the business needs. To William's point, businesses have so many competing priorities. It's hard enough to get them to implement and even harder to involve them in the process if the research questions on which you're working aren't actually on their radar. So if you don't want to be pushing a big rock up a big hill all the way, my suggestion would be to start with some of the questions that business is actually grappling with on a day-to-day basis. It also helps justify their involvement when they're trying to communicate this internally and build buy-in. So in terms of the role of this group, we involve them in 2 ways. One is in deciding on the top issues, the challenges and research priorities on which Tim's going to be speaking a little bit more. and then also actually co-creating the research with the research team. And both roles are quite important. If there's a piece of advice to offer in terms of building this group, I think being quite deliberate about the composition is important. So for one, we've created this group to represent across industries for a few reasons. So first, it allows them to be innovative in a way that I think they can't be if we just bring people from the same sector to the table. The flip side of that too is by getting non-competitors, they're willing to share more openly, so you get more candid conversation about what the real challenges are facing these firms. And three, we also wanted to generate issues, research questions that cut across not only the work of NBS, but that will also help inspire other research programs. So that goes to our mandate, which is about bridging the gap beyond just our own research, saying how can we help bring research and practice closer together to enable more sustainability. The final thing on this slide, I would say, is getting not only the right companies to the table, but the right individuals is really important, whether you're doing a single research project or starting to build more of a research portfolio. So when I say the right companies, I think you want to get companies with the positioning, the capacity, and the internal infrastructure to engage in these longer term endeavors, but also the right individuals. And so William talked about needing persistence to keep these projects going some time, and having champions, and Tim's a great example of that, but champions who will help pull the work forward within the organization despite all of these competing priorities. Then you've got the best of both worlds. So if you can start with a company that is primed to engage on a particular topic, that's got the will and the infrastructure and the bandwidth to support, and find the best possible person with whom to work on that, who can really help pull it forward when things may get tough because of either administrative reasons, working through legal issues, or just sort of navigating the complexities and timelines involved with doing research, get the best person on board. And I think we've done a pretty good job with that over time, and we have some companies that have been with us on this list for more than 6 years, more than my time, which is a very subjective measure, but I think one of my own measures of the endurance of some of these partnerships. Next slide, please. I'm going to tell you very briefly about our research process, which starts with the challenges identified by business, and Tim will tell you more on those in a second. The key is starting with issues that matter to business, and so I'm going to talk you through this process with one example. In 2012, the Leadership Council came together in September and said, one of our top issues is around how do we innovate for sustainability? How do we do it quickly, effectively, and systematically? We said, great. Let's take that out to the research community and see what we can turn out. And so we put out a call for proposals to researchers around the world. We had more than 20 fantastic applications from all over the place. And the research team with whom we ended up working was led by Dr. Richard Adams out of the University of Exeter. And so Richard Adams and his team worked with a practitioner committee made up of people like Tim from our Leadership Council, and they synthesized the research over the period of about a year on this topic of innovating for sustainability. And so the committee helps keep them on track, make sure they're continuing to answer the question that's important, and that the kind of work that's starting to come out of this is accessible and relevant for managers. Through that group, the managers and the research team co-create frameworks, tools, and insights that are going to be able to be implemented by practice. And that's a really key learning for us, because in the first days we would just synthesize the research and kind of put it out to the world. But we've recognized that creating these frameworks that can be used by both researchers, but also have meaning and can be implemented by practice are hugely important if we're going to have any impact with the work. Finally, we share these outputs broadly via convening, media, our website, which helps to increase the impacts of the work beyond some of the core central NBS groups. And this speaks to our public-private model. And NBS is about just under 50% funded by government and about 55–60% funded by industry. And to this point, all of our research, the outputs of these projects have been available for free online to anyone 24/7 at nbs.net. And so this helps to increase the uptake, and the companies who engage in the councils get some additional private benefits in terms of working closely with the researchers and with others. But the kinds of organizations that we have also see value in this thought leadership. And so being viewed as companies that are contributing to the broader base of knowledge is quite important to many of them. So I guess the takeaway there would be to think upstream about the full life cycle of your work. So if you're going to be engaged in a single research project or starting to build a research program, really get your head around what you'd like to see come out of this, what's likely to happen in the middle, and I think that helps you set up not only who are the partners, but how do you manage that process and manage their expectations, because managing expectations is a tremendously important part of doing this work. So for instance, these projects take about 1 year to complete. The Innovating for Sustainability project, start to finish, I think was about 13 months. And what that allowed us to do was bring something back to the Leadership Council that we could say, here's the research, what next? And so as it turned out, there was appetite to do more on this project. To William's point about kind of testing out the waters, we tested them out over a year, which seemed like a reasonable timeline for the researchers and a reasonable timeline for the businesses. And they said, we would like to do more. There's a lot of appetite around this, and so we're now going back and evolving the framework more with the intention of building it into a number of working groups on the subject. So that's just one example that we're quite excited about right now. And so I'm going to turn it over to Tim, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about his work with Tim Hortons and also the challenges that the Leadership Council came up with for the coming year.
Thanks, Pam. I guess this first slide is just to give those of you that may not know what Tim Hortons is all about a very quick overview. We are in the quick service restaurant space, largest in Canada. We're 50 years old this year, actually. Over 4,000 restaurants across our chain. Our company is kind of unique with respect to culture. Our founders were a great Canadian hockey player and a former police officer. So you get a sense to the kind of culture that is in play within our corporate group. 4,000 restaurants, predominantly in Canada and the United States. We do have outlets in Ireland, in the UK, through partners in grocery retail, that includes Spar. And we're also in the Gulf Cooperation Council in Dubai and the United Arab Emirates as well. We're vertically integrated, so we have coffee roasting facilities, glaze and fill facilities, and we have a massive distribution network, 5 distribution centers across Canada. And what's unique to our business truly is our franchised percentage. We're virtually 100% franchise, which provides some great opportunities, but also has unique challenges from my perspective in sustainability, because I need to engage and interact with our franchise partners just as much as I have to do corporately. This brings us around to that kind of culture that we have. It's very service-oriented towards our restaurant owners. And I think that provides interesting input at the Leadership Council level as well, because most are corporate entities that don't have that community connection that we do through our restaurant owners. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to do is just highlight, provide some color commentary on some of the challenges, or the challenges that we came up with in last year's Leadership Summit. What's very interesting, and from our business perspective, is that a lot of these issues have been on our top 10 or top 8 and taking different forms as you know, we progress on collectively as a Leadership Council on our own sustainability journeys. Number one, acting for tomorrow today. You know, we believe as a council that there's pretty much an inherent disconnect sometimes with respect to sustainability issues and the way corporations operate. and report. You know, we're publicly traded companies are reporting quarterly, and sustainability initiatives are typically long-term. So it's about and seeking guidance on better integrating that kind of long-term vision and point of view into the business decisions that are made, and particularly investments in big projects that are going to have a lifespan and integrate into that longer-term generational approach. That kind of links as well into number two in creating resilient programs. So, you know, a significant downturn in the economy like we've had in North America and globally has put pressure on sustainability groups and businesses to execute programs. Leadership changes and reorg, government policy shifts as it may affect local business and national business. All of these are important, obviously, to my peers at the Leadership Council and most organizations. Is that how can we make our strategy resilient and survive these kind of big changes that ultimately we don't have control over. Number four is very interesting, particularly to a retail company like Tim Hortons. And again, you know, I've been in the sustainability space for over a decade, and in the environmental space for many years longer than that. And in North America, anyway, sustainability still holds this kind of niche space in the marketplace. And again, for those of us on the retail council, on the Leadership Council, this is an important issue. And lastly, that I think many of you globally may resonate with is number six, and that's improving sustainability and value chains. And certainly, you know, this is highlighted through recent global incidents such as the factories in Bangladesh. We as well have you know, the effects of climate change, reduced and rising commodity costs and reduced commodities in general. And I think it's a very important aspect. Sustainability is reaching, in many organizations, reaching down into the supply chain because that's typically where most of the impact is. We have good control over our outlets and our distribution fleets, etc. But the real impact is down in the supply chain. And next slide, please. So from a business perspective, you know, what I can say personally, that being involved in MBS has been very rewarding, very powerful. Just getting the Leadership Council members together certainly is a credit to MBS to be able to align schedules, etc. But I can tell you that it's a summit. It's 2 days that myself and I know a lot of other peers on the council look forward to, because it's a great opportunity to maintain networking with leading organizations, bounce ideas off, share best practices, innovations, and it's something we look forward to because it's kind of an annual checkpoint in what everyone's doing. We all get so busy over the course of the year and have priorities, then it's very helpful to come together. And the process is very formal. We've gotten accustomed to sharing at the level that we do, and the rigor and the formality around identifying issues. It's unique, I think, to MBS. I'm involved in other processes and and groups, and I always kind of reflect back on what MBS provides and the formality around it. The research is really important as well from a business case perspective. So we personally use a lot of the research that comes out to benchmark and to inform our overall sustainability strategy. You know, the roll-up and input from academic and research is vitally important to inform those business decisions. And I think that's both the process and the research rolls down into the overall value associated with being involved in NBS. And I think that's where we're at. Are we on time, Tima?
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Absolutely on time. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Pam. And you can turn your videos off now and your audio. And I don't have any questions from questions of clarification, nor hands up. So we'll just move to the next presenter, who is John Robinson at UBC. He runs their sustainability initiative, which is the Center for Interactive Research on Sustainability. He is also the Associate Provost of Sustainability at the University of British Columbia. I have to say that's really quite remarkable that they have an Associate Provost position in that area. John, by the way, if you want to turn on your webcam and audio, we can get you started soon. I have to say that not only did we move the speakers from the people that I've known, I guess, the least amount of time, we've now moved to the speaker that I've known the most amount of time. And John, it's because he is such a powerful mover and shaker on the Canadian landscape. I think any Canadian in this area has known of John for decades and what he's done in terms of the building at UBC. And I just have to say that when we asked him for his bio, his only comment was that he cares about sustainability because he has 5 sons. So you have to enjoy that. So with that, John, over to you.
Thanks, Dima. It's a real pleasure to be here and really interesting to hear the other experiences. I think there's some real overlaps in our various experiences of engaging with the world and trying to help change it. Next slide, please. What I want to talk about is actually some of the lessons we learned from trying to create the Center for Interactive Research on Sustainability. That's a picture of it you can see in front of you now. CIRS is a sort of $37 million research instrument. And the goal was to create not just a building, but a process of engagement and social change. Next slide, please. So a key component of that was the concept of a building that would push the limits of sustainability, but would be a living lab. And we found this living laboratory concept very powerful. It's had a lot of resonance beyond CIRS, and indeed is being used in many institutions these days. In the CIRS context, what it means is that everything in the building, the paint, the glazing, the furniture, the energy systems, the structure, everything is research over the whole life of the building in how to make more sustainable buildings. And those research projects are inescapably connected to partnerships with private, public, and NGO sector partners. Next slide, please. The concept underlying CIRS is that we wanted to build a building that demonstrated what we call regenerative sustainability. This isn't the sustainability of limits and constraints about how to do less damage or less harm. This is the sustainability that explores human activity that can actually improve environmental and human well-being. So CIRS was designed to be regenerative in 2 ways. Next slide. The first was environmentally. We wanted to build a building that was net positive on energy, operational carbon, water quality, and structural carbon. So the design of the building is such that adding a 60,000 square foot building to the UBC campus would actually reduce UBC's energy use, would improve water quality on the campus, would embed more carbon in the structure of the building than all the carbon emitted by all the construction machinery building the building and all the carbon emitted in producing everything inside the building. And there was also a net benefit in operational carbon as well. Next slide, please. But we wanted to go beyond environmental well-being and look at human well-being as well. So this is a building where the goal is actually over time to improve human health, productivity, and happiness. If we succeed in these 7 areas, then we'll have demonstrated at the building scale that you can actually be regenerative at that scale. This concept of regenerative sustainability and of being net positive and having a living lab is now being applied across the whole campus. We're turning our whole campus into a living lab where we offer really 400 buildings, 400 hectares 15 million square feet out to the world as a sandbox and say to the private sector, the public sector, the NGO sector, come in and play with this campus. We want to make every single operational decision on campus a sustainability decision, and we want to attach research and teaching to all of that, but we need help. We need help, and we don't commercialize, we don't make laws, we need help with community engagement and social license. So private sector, public sector, NGO sector, come in and work with us kind of at a very interesting scale, urban neighborhood scale. So what I want to do is talk about some of the lessons we learned in trying to do this. It took 10 years to make CIRS happen. It was a long process. I don't recommend that to anyone. But we did learn some lessons in doing that. And we've kind of codified them in terms of 5 metaphors. So these are really practical lessons. You might think of them as scar tissue that we developed over this long process of trying to actually make this project happen. There is a theory behind all of this. We think the sustainability transition theory and socio-technical regimes multi-level perspective provides a really nice theoretical background, but I'm going to focus in here just on the very practical dimensions of these 5 lessons. We think that they have some applicability in many contexts. Next slide, please. The first is the well-known problem of path dependence. I call this needle in the groove. And basically, although that betrays my age, basically the needle always falls back into the groove. You're trying to create a new groove. You're trying to change institutional behavior. And so you move the needle, you push it away where you want to create the new groove. But the point is that if you turn your back for even a second, gravity dictates that it falls back down into the groove. And gravity in this case are all of the institutional rules that determine what people do on Monday morning. The job descriptions, the performance evaluation criteria, the codes of practice, the professional requirements, the regulatory requirements, all of those rules actually act as the kind of walls of the groove, and they keep the needle in that groove. So you have to constantly be there pushing the needle. It's a persistence, as William mentioned, is crucial. You can't just have a great idea and put it out and think that it's going to change the world. You've just got to keep working at it. Next slide, please. A related problem is the problem of coordination. There were 9 offices at UBC that had full or partial veto power over developing CIRS. None of them could make it happen. It wasn't their job. It wasn't their mandate. But they had the power to stop us in their tracks. So I had to visit all of those 9 offices quite frequently to make sure the plate didn't fall off the stick, to give it a little spin. And you just have to do that in any large institutional context and in society at large. You have to know who is in a position to stop the problem within your organization and why that is. And you have to be able to speak to them in ways that prevent them sort of issuing that veto power over you. Next slide, please. Very closely related is the problem of momentum or bricklaying. In these kinds of projects, if 6 months passes with no action, you can be dead in the water. Momentum is all. You have to show that there's some real progress being made. I call that laying bricks. Every time I had a meeting with anybody related to CIRS, or now in my current job at the campus scale, I want to have some progress to show. I want to have some little development, exciting development, hopefully, that I can lay on the table and show that this is a going concern, that really has some momentum, it has some inertia, and it's really going to happen. The way I say that now is CIRS was always inevitable, but the number of people who knew it was inevitable was very small at first. Now, of course, it exists, so everyone knows it was inevitable. That's a sort of an optimistic interpretation of that history. Next slide, please. Pam and Tim and William have all talked about the partnership issue, and this turns out to be crucial. CIRS would have died several times if I wasn't able to bring onto campus off-campus partners who were real supporters of it. That was a critical part to show that the community, the society at large, valued this kind of endeavor is really important. And I think all of us who are academics can testify to the power of having these kinds of partnerships in trying to build the research and activity that we're trying to develop in sustainability. I liken this to a mosaic. Every partner is like a particular tile in the mosaic, And what we had to be was the grout. We had to be the point of contact that was making connections between all these different tiles. And if we did that, we could assemble a mosaic. And that mosaic would be greater than any sum of the parts. It wasn't just the individual partners. It was actually this new picture that was being created. But being mosaic is really important and difficult to do. It involves giving up some control. It involves being quite adaptive and having shape-shifting characteristics. It involves translation, a lot of interaction, and so on. Next slide, please. Then we have the problem of the university culture. The university doesn't typically see itself as activist and engaged in the community in quite the way we were trying to develop. So the question of the wallflower, how to get people off the wall and to join the dance. Faculty in general don't feel they work for the university. The university is there to give us salary and office space, but our peers are elsewhere in the world. And so the culture of the university does not lend itself to collaborative engagement. It lends itself to individual engagement. So trying to create this process where it is in the interests of faculty and staff to engage with the world is a bit of a challenge. Next slide, please. Those are the 5 metaphors, really simple summaries of some of the things we experienced on the way. I want to draw some general lessons from that. The first was that the barriers to sustainability are basically never technical or even economic. They often look economic, but in fact, they're almost all institutional. They're about the job descriptions, performance evaluation criteria, codes of practice, and so on. The institutional rules that militate against sustainability. Changing those institutional rules is crucial. Policy is great. I'm a big fan of good sustainability policy, but if you just have policy and you don't change the job descriptions, then I'm skeptical. I think you've got to get down in the guts of the institution and really look at how are people being rewarded? How does promotion and tenure play out in this context? How do the job descriptions of building operations personnel influence their behavior? Institutional design is crucial, I think, in getting to real change and real partnership. Second point is all of the 5 metaphors I've mentioned are about engagement and continuous engagement. This isn't something you can do off the corner of your desk, 1 day a week. You just have to put a lot of time and effort into it. I liken it to small business. Small business, we know, is all absorbing. It takes every second of your life to make a small business succeed. I think it's very similar here. You really have to engage fairly deeply to get to the point of significant change. My third point, summary point, is an optimistic point. I've discovered, and a lot of us have discovered here, I think that there's a huge latent demand for change. People want sustainability. I've actually never met anyone who argues for unsustainability. They want it, but they don't see how to get it. They don't see how they can make it work in their context. They don't see how it fits with their job description and their world. So finding ways to enable people to do sustainability, to do the kinds of things they would like to do if they were given an opportunity, is very powerful. At UBC, the USI that I direct, University Sustainability Initiative, doesn't actually do teaching or do research or do building operations or infrastructure development. It enables. We find the champions out there and try and make it easier for them to accomplish what they want to do. So those are the 5 metaphors. I'll end with a comment about partnerships. We found that in developing partnerships, 2 principles are very useful: mutual benefit and no net increase. Nobody can do any more. They're already working. They're too busy to breathe. So there can't be a net increase in activity. There has to be an overlap at a deep level of strategic benefit. And then partnership can really fly. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. Right on time. I have to say that what really strikes me among all 3 speakers is the importance of the relationship itself. And so the relationships came up over and over again, as well as this notion of persistence and then value creation, that we actually have to offer a benefit. So those are 3 themes that seem to cut across all of them. And John, if you want to turn off your video, you're welcome to, as well as your mic, maybe. So now we'd like to actually have a bit of conversation. We don't have a lot of time left, but 5 or 6 minutes. If what I'd really like to get is maybe some questions, as well, even your own insights about what you've learned through your relationships. And so we need you to raise your hand. And I can see when your hand is raised, and then I will unmute you. And I know that there's a tendency to be shy in a webinar and you're a passive listener, but I'm confident that all of you have some impact that you can share. And I am not a entertainer. You don't want me to start, so I will wait patiently. Oh, there we go. Terry, I'm going to unmute you.
Good morning. This is Terry Nellida from the Urban Institute in Michigan. And I was curious if you could offer some thoughts on all of your speakers on how to weave different projects, both research and application oriented, into a long-term coherent research agenda, so that at the end of 2, 3, 4 years, you can look back and say, these have been our research themes, and we've produced consistently deliverables in these particular lines.
So I'm going to ask all our speakers if you can actually turn on your video and unmute yourself. Oh, okay. Okay, let's go with that. We've got William, John, and Tim. William, did you want, and Pam there. William, did you want to answer that question at all? Long-term research agenda.
Well, just really that it's broad enough that it can encompass different things of companies rather than being so specialist that it's one-off projects. But that is obviously a delicate balancing thing. So that's the only thing I would say on that.
Tim, your perspective on a company, how do we engage you for the long term?
Well, that's part of the puzzle that companies have to face too, is that keeping up with our initiatives and programs and allocating budget on an annual basis, we have to demonstrate to the decision makers in the organization that these projects still require funding and need to move forward. So it's kind of a balancing act, but certainly if the vision within the organization is there, the commitment needs to be made right up front that it's a 3-year project with potentially 2 additional years, that kind of thing. That's the approach we take when we do development work in coffee growing regions, is that we're in this for the long term, not just a one-off type of approach.
Pam, anything to add? Oh, you're muted, Pam.
Nothing substantive except to say that this is something I think a lot about. Oh, good. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, just to say that this is something we think a lot about too, and one of the issues is it's not always obvious at the start of the research program what's going to be required to get you where you need to go. And to Tim's point, the priorities for companies certainly are change year to year. So we've tried to take a more kind of organic approach and split some of these research programs into chunks and say, let's see how far this gets us, and if we haven't achieved what we think we can achieve, the needle's kind of the target's moving, then just be deliberate about rescoping that and whether it's starting a new project or continuing on. So I agree with William as far as sort of having to sort of see where things end up, because it is awfully hard to say we're going to do all of these things in the next 4 years and have all our partners with us at the finish line when we do.
John, anything to add?
I want to quote a couple of private sector colleagues of mine who once said to me, "Where's the pain?" If you don't find some pain, people aren't willing to engage. And so my advice is to find some pain out there that is long term. I'll give you 2 examples. With green buildings in general, we're seeing the emergence of a performance gap. A lot of these buildings are just not performing according to design around the world. This is a global problem, I think. This is a problem the green building industry has to get on top of, because if they don't, they're dead in the water. And so there's some pain, potential pain, that we think we can contribute to. A second example, a major real estate development company came to us and said, we're interested in the behavioral side of buildings. We think we understand the technical performance issues, but we have to deal with tenants, multi-unit residential buildings. And how do we engage with that? How do we create behavior change in the tenant population? I think that's kind of a long-term issue as well. So if we can identify areas that are kind of research interest, but have actual real practical implications for the private or public or NGO sector partners, then I think that's a winning opportunity.
Thanks, John. And maybe I can get you all to mute your lines because we're getting a little bit of feedback. And Trevor, good on you because you asked a question that took up the entire time. So I didn't have to give you a comedy routine after all. I'm going to wrap up now just in the interest of time because it is 12 o'clock. First of all, I do want to thank you for your participation in this webinar and wanted to also highlight a few things. One is that once you sign off the webinar, you will have an exit survey. Please take the time to answer the questions. It'll only take 5 minutes, but will help us know the topic to have next time. So your input's really important. A reminder that there's a workshop at the Harvard Business School on June 25th, 27th. We'll do a deeper dive in these issues as well, talk about how to build joint capacity and think about collaborations. And then finally, we do have a Research Impact on Practice Award that we give, and this is NBS, and I encourage you to nominate research articles that your faculty have written so that we can summarize them and distribute them so that they can have impact on our community of practice. And I think that's primarily everything. Chelsea, have I missed anything?
No, I think we're good.
Good. Okay. Well, once again, I want to thank most of all our speakers for taking the time to do the slides and engaging us in this conversation, and the rest of you for participating. Thanks, everybody. Bye.